Good evening, everybody. Let's make a start. Thank you, gentlemen. My name's Patrick Hall. I'm the Mayor of the City of Canning. Welcome to this evening's Ordinary Council meeting for the month of June. I declare the meeting open, the time now being 6 p.m. Disregard that clock. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land. We also pay our respects to elders both past and present. Can I ask all present here this evening, including our elected members, to please turn off your mobile phones and put them away for the duration of this meeting. The meeting is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Council meetings are public meetings. Any information you provide shall be recorded and may be made publicly accessible. And the council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held publicly or personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them, and nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the City of Canning unless it is adopted by a resolution of council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the City publishes a recording of the meeting. Recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the City of Canning's express permission. At item 2, attendance, we have one apology. Councillor Jacobs is not with us this evening. Approved leave of absence at item 2.2, there are none. Disclosures of interest. Our Chief Executive Officer, Mr Michael Littleton, can you please advise if we've received any declarations?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've received a number of declarations for tonight's meeting. So in relation to item 3.1, declarations of interest, of financial interest, the first is received from myself, Michael Littleton, in relation to CC 01423 on page 27. The item referred to specifically the Chief Executive Officer Performance and Salary Review 2022-23 and the Chief Executive Officer Key Performance Indicators for 2023-2024. The nature of my interest is I am the subject of these reports as the CEO. I declare that I have had no involvement in the preparation of the above reports other than to review the proposed 23-24 KPIs attached to CC 00323. I have received the following declaration of financial interest from Director Driscoll in relation to item 12.1 on page 5, Report of Audit and Risk Committee held on the 31st of May 2023. The nature of the interest is I am an employee and this report relates to my contract of employment. As the responsible officer of this report, I have had oversight of employees included in the report and I took external legal advice and consulted an independent audit firm to validate the information contained. I have received 4 declarations from Director Bride, Director Bowe, Director McQuaid, and General Counsel Mr Soiser, again in relation to item 12.1, page 5, Report of Audit and Risk Committee held on the 31st of May 2023. The nature of their interest is I am an employee and this report relates to my contract of employment. So that is a common nature of interest relating to all 4 of those employees. So in relation to item 3.2, declarations of interest affecting impartiality, I've received one from Councillor Mark Bain. It is in relation to EN 01223, Environmental Honour Board nominations 21-22. The nature of Councillor Bain's interest is I know and have done volunteer work with 4 of the nominees. That's all of the declarations that I've received to date.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Councillor Bain, for your declaration. At item 4, announcements by the presiding member without discussion. I do actually have just 2 announcements. First of all, councillors, in relation to the agenda, I just want to advise of a slight amendment report in relation to the Audit and Risk Committee held on the 31st of May 2023. That item, which is under item 12, reports of committee meetings, will be moved to an item under confidential cover and will be dealt with by council later on in this meeting. In relation to other announcements, Just one item. Councillors, as you know, last week I represented the City of Canning at the Australian Local Government Association's National Assembly in Canberra. And as the Mayor and as a member of the Western Australian Local Government Association State Council, it's important to attend local government forums of national significance, so that I can take the opportunity, as I did, to learn from my peers, share ideas and experiences, and hear the issues that are most affecting our sector nationally. 1,100 delegates from local governments in every state and territory of Australia attended, including the Lord Mayor of Perth and the mayors of Fremantle, Armidale, Gosnells, Victoria Park, Coburn, Subiaco, Bayswater, Swan, and many other local governments. I was privileged to have been addressed by His Excellency Vasyl Moischenko, the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia, and to learn firsthand of the heartbreaking effect of the war on the Ukrainian people and on their governments. Ukraine too has a local government sector, with each town and city governed by mayors and elected officials similar to our own. We also heard from specialists from the Australian Cyber Security Centre and Telstra on the growing threat to local government by cyber security issues. We were briefed on the national housing crisis and a range of other compelling matters, such as building stronger workforces and developing and delivering policy. It was a really valuable experience to engage in a panel discussion on cyclones, fires and floods, especially for an urban council like Canning, and to learn of the incredible resilience and fortitude of local governments across the nation who have faced almost insurmountable natural disasters but have endured. It was an incredibly busy 2 days. On Thursday evening, I had the good fortune to be invited to attend a formal dinner at Parliament House, hosted by the Prime Minister himself, at which he declared the Australian Council of Local Government open, the first time that the Council had been convened in more than 12 years. Friday was a full day engaging with ministers over a broad range of issues affecting local governments, for which federal government has responsibility and an interest. The Prime Minister himself, Deputy Prime Minister, and many of his cabinet were in attendance, as were almost 600 delegates from local governments right across the nation. Among a number of announcements, the Prime Minister announced to the Assembly a new $100 million fund, a national fund, spread over 2 years, to support renewable energy projects. And those will include LED transformation and a whole range of renewable energy projects. And we really look forward to receiving more news and more detail on that fund as it comes to hand. But that was breaking news announced to the sector during that council. And just in closing, it was a really extremely worthwhile few days. I thank Deputy Mayor Ben Kunze for chairing last week's agenda briefing so that I was able to attend and represent the city. Thanks very much, Ben, for doing that. And that is all from me on that item, and I shall now move to item 5, which are reports of delegates without discussion. I haven't been notified of any reports from delegates. Anyone wish to present a delegate report? No, thank you, councillors. We'll move to question time for the public at item 6. In regards to responses to previous questions which may have been taken on notice at item 6.1, there are none. At item 6.2, questions from the public, the time set aside for public question time is 15 minutes. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting, which will be July. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will always precede verbal questions. The City has received questions for tonight's meeting, written questions on notice from Mr. Chiri. Mr. Chiri, can I ask you to step forward, please, if you are present? Are you present? Thank you. I'll ask you just to introduce yourself to the council, just state your name and address, and then go ahead with your questions, and we'll do our best to provide an answer. And I declare public question time open now at 6:10 p.m. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Khalid Chiri, 43 Rossmoyne Drive, Rossmoyne. I am here today to raise some concern regarding the classification and safety of the Rossmoyne Shelley foreshore footpath, which in our city. I would like to pose 3 questions to the council consideration. First question is, Why does the City of Canning administration insist on classifying nearly the entire Rosemont Shelley foreshore footpath, which is only 3 meters wide and sometimes situated merely 1 meter away from a passing cars, as dog exercise area, when neighboring offshore local governments such as Melville and South Perth enforce their shared path as either dog prohibited zones or dog on leash zones area?
Thank you. I'll ask Director Warren Bowe to my right here just to respond to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Shelley Rossmoyne foreshore is a popular asset within the city and a place for all to enjoy. You will note from the community consultation feedback there are alternative views on the proportion of on-leash and off-leash areas along the foreshore. There is a need to strike a balance and provide opportunities for cyclists, pedestrians and dog owners. There is approximately 2,500 lineal metres of on-leash area along the Shelley Rossmoyne foreshore, and there's approximately 4,000 lineal metres of off-leash area, which equates to about 60%. In the City of Melville, dogs must remain on a leash on all streets and shared pathways, and also any reserve on which a sporting activity is in progress. The City of South Perth's dog exercise area map indicates that dogs may be off-leash at 3 foreshore sites that include dual-use paths, including Sir James Mitchell Park, the Narrows Parklands, and a stretch of foreshore from Thelma Street to Canning Cloister foreshore.
We're doing our best to take a practical view to the issue, Mr Cherry. I'll just ask you to ask your second question, please. Thank you.
Has the Council administration conducted comprehensive risk assessment and safety evaluation regarding the presence of off-leash dogs on shared footpath and playgrounds?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Risk management is an inherent responsibility of local government, and through the application of appropriate controls, the City is satisfied that the level of risk associated with dogs utilising public open space, whether on-leash or off-leash, is acceptable.
Thank you. And just your final question, Mr Cherry. Thank you.
The final question is, should the Council or its administration be held accountable for negligence if a child ran into the road to avoid a dog off-leash and was struck by a vehicle while walking along the shared footpath?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Neither the Council nor its administration is likely to be liable for negligence in those instances. The City has to balance the interest of all users in the use of the foreshore area and public open space generally. Under the Dog Act 1976, owners are required to be in control of their dogs whilst in off-leash areas. Additionally, parents have a duty of care as well regarding keeping an eye on their children and to anticipate potential dangers whilst utilising the City's public open space facilities, irrespective of whether they are in an on-leash or off-leash area where dogs are present.
Thank you for coming along this evening. We appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for addressing the Council. We have Mr George Beecroft here, former councillor. Mr Beecroft, welcome. How are we going with that water problem out front of your place? We're getting that sorted out?
No, Mr Mayor, we've still got the water problem.
Bit of a mystery, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We've had your, Kyle, one of your council employees, has put a lot of time and effort into this, and we appreciate it very much, but it's a complete mystery where the water's coming from.
To all of us, I think. So we'll get to the bottom of it. I'm certain that we will. Your question, Mr Beecroft, you wanted to ask a question in regards to the memorial for Mr Leakius.
That's right. George Beecroft, 9 Civic Gardens, Cannington. Mr Mayor, it's exactly 16 months since the council passed a resolution to erect a mural and rename the Riverton Leisureplex. Now, it seems to be dragging on, and we feel that this is being pushed under the carpet a little bit, and can't see anything. Have been no progress whatsoever. Do you have an update on where we are at the moment?
I'll ask, if you don't mind, Mr Beecroft, Director McQuaid to answer that question. She's a full bottle on it and up to speed with where we're at.
Thank you.
Director?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the question, Mr Beecroft. We have progressed some ways with the project. The dual naming has taken place. You'll notice external signage on the main building and also all the internal signage has now taken place. As per the council report, branding of uniforms and business cards will happen as and when we replace. We were never looking to do wholesale change of that due to the prohibitive cost of it, but we will do it as we replace uniforms and as we replace. So the dual naming has most definitely taken hold through all public signage of the building. And with regard to the artwork, the mural, we had agreed with the family that we would wait for the dual naming to be completed, which we have done, and now we are liaising with the family and the artist on the proposed artwork.
So we're following the lead of the family in this regard, so we're keeping the family fully informed?
Yes, Mr Mayor, we are.
Yep. It's going to take a little while, Mr Beecroft, but we've started. At least the signage has been changed on the outside of the building, but I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for your involvement in that piece. It was an important tribute to Mr Leakius, the former mayor. We will get it done. It's just going to take a little while, and we're dealing with all the family members, and we want to get it right the first time. So no one's looking forward to it more than I know you and me and the whole council to being down there on that day when we're able to have an official opening of the newly renamed building, but it might just take a little bit longer. We'll keep you up to speed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, Melissa, Dr. Leakis' daughter, is somebody who is very hard to get hold of. So I think she must be away an awful lot. Do you know where we are at the moment with the mural?
We mentioned the artist, but yes, Dr. McQuaid.
Yes, we've had a number of meetings with the family and with the artist on the artwork. We've landed on a location for where the artwork will take, and now we're just waiting on the artist's availability to complete the artwork.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming along. Thank you. At item 8 this evening, at item 7, confirmation of minutes from the ordinary council meeting that was held on the 16th of May in 2023. The officer's recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on that date be confirmed as circulated. The recommendation is on page 2 of the agenda, and the recommendation is also on screen. Councillors, can I have a mover for that item, please? I'll move it from the chair. A seconder, Councillor Bain, thank you. We'll put that matter to the vote. Just stand by, councillors, whilst the magic happens. Thank you, councillors.
The motion to confirm the minutes from the May OCM has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. With this new system, Governance, can I just ask, will those results be shown on screen as we did previously with the seating?
Not at this stage, it doesn't have a seating display.
No magic. Okay, all right. We'll persevere. Thank you. At item 8, receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1, petitions, there are none. At 8.2, presentations, there are none. At item 8.3, a deputation in the first instance has been approved for Mr. Kayla Chiri, who spoke to us a little bit earlier regarding EN 013 of 23, the outcome of community engagement on a review of on-leash and off-lead spaces, and that matter will be dealt with later by council. Mr. Chiri, please come forward to make your deputation. You have up to 10 minutes. Thank you. We'll just turn on that microphone. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, respected Mayor and members of the Council. Today I stand before you to address a matter of utmost importance: the Council recent review of dogs on and off leash areas. The review aimed at gathering feedback from the community, including my family and many others who actively participated. However, I am disheartened to observe that our feedback, despite being sent directly to the executive manager through my local councillor, due to the survey closing prior to us having a chance to respond, has seemingly been overlooked or omitted from the final report. Such disregard raises doubts regarding the credibility of the survey and concerns about the Council's administration's commitment to incorporating all viewpoints when presenting their recommendations to Council. It becomes imperative to understand how the Council can make informed decisions if all views are not presented or considered in the report. That's all right. Consider the dilemma faced by families like mine with 11 energetic children, all under the age of 8. It is difficult to comprehend why we must travel a considerable distance of 10 kilometers to access a dog-free playground, such as the one in Kitchener Road, Melville. Yet, my daughter lives just a few meters away from the Shelley Park or Shelley Reserve, with its enticing fenced playground. Yet, she and her 3 younger children are forced to navigate through the park, designated as a dog exercise area, where dogs roam freely. There is no entrance to the fenced playground without crossing the dog exercise area, unsafe and makes no sense. They have had frightened encounters with large, enthusiastic dogs running up to them and surrounding their pram while trying to reach the playground. According to the Council Dog Spaces strategy, it clearly states that children under the age of 8 are at the greatest risk when it comes to dog bite prevention, as dogs are not able to recognize children as humans due to the lack of sweat glands on children. Just without really going into more graphic sense, the 4-year-old now, he cannot basically go to any playground other than the Melville playground on Kitchener Road, simply because of how the dogs is actually inviting themselves, to them. Furthermore, it is worth noting that a significant portion of the Rosemont Shelley foreshore, spanning 9 kilometers, has been designated as dogs exercise area, encompassing the majority of playgrounds, almost entirely. If it's not 100%, could I actually say 90% of all playgrounds in Rosemont are dogs exercise area. There is not a single playground, not a dog exercise area. However, neighboring council, again, like Melville and South Perth, have chosen to enforce regulation that prohibit dogs entirely on shared paths and within many playgrounds. This raises the questions as to why the city of Canning differs so significantly from similar local government in addressing concerns of safety to humans, dogs themselves, and wildlife. I ask the Council to consider its liability and the potential risk associated with off-leash dogs on shared pathways and playgrounds without fence. These risks can be easily mitigated, as demonstrated by neighboring councils that have designated shared pathways areas along the foreshore and river catchment. Allow me to draw your attention to the unfortunate incident that occurred in James Mitchell Park, which has been mentioned in South Perth. It serves as a stark reminder of the potential danger involved in allowing dogs to be off-lead without appropriate fencing. In that incident, a frightened dog, attacked by another dog, ran towards Mill Point Road, prompting 2 individuals to chase after the dog. Tragically, all 3 were struck by a car, resulting in the dog's death and the men sustaining concussions and broken legs. By addressing these concerns, the Council can demonstrate its unwavering commitment to the safety and well-being of the community. It is imperative that you actively consider and incorporate the perspective of all stakeholders, ensuring the decision regarding off-leash dogs and the designation of exercise area are made within the utmost care and consideration to ensure safety and risk mitigation. Thank you for the time and for considering the welfare of our community as you deliberate on these matters.
Before you leave the podium, Mr. Chiri, I just want to congratulate you on your deputation. It was a fine deputation, delivered perfectly well, so thank you for that. I know this is a space that Council has been deliberating over. Our dog spaces strategy at the moment is a strategy that we will continually review. It's a space that we could probably do better. I think you've raised a very good a point of view tonight. We're working towards making some inroads in that. I know it doesn't completely mitigate the issues you've raised, but at Bywater Park in Wilson and other parks, we're now starting to invest money in completely fencing some of the playgrounds to provide that separation for people who are not quite as enamoured with dogs as probably I am and many others are. So we need to make sure that we're a welcoming community for all residents and that we take on board the opinions of people like yourself, all residents from all corners of our community. So again, thank you for coming down. I apologise that your feedback wasn't included. There may be good reason for that in that final report, but you did have the opportunity tonight to address me personally and also the full council of the City of Canning, and I thank you for taking the opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. A deputation has been approved tonight for Mr Jackson Tomich regarding CD 009 of 23, the adoption of Scheme Amendment number 10 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, portion of lot 102 in brackets 280, Bannister Road in Canning Vale. The title of that includes the introduction of additional gross floor area provisions within additional use site number 3 in Schedule B. Mr Tomich, I can see you've made your way to the podium. Well done, thank you. Please commence with your deputation. You have up to 10 minutes. Perhaps you'll start by introducing yourself to the council. Thank you.
Dear Mayor and Councillors, thank you for your time this evening. My name is Jackson Tomich and I speak in relation to agenda item CD 00923, which is the initiation of Scheme Amendment number 10 to Local Planning Scheme number 42. I'm from Urbis and we are the project town planner. I'm joined this evening by Michael Bryden, the Chief Executive Officer of Perth Markets Limited. I'd like to thank the planning officers once again for their consideration and reporting on the proposal. The purpose of this deputation is to express our full support for the officers' recommendation and to respond to some matters raised in last week's council briefing session. I'll hand over to Michael, who will talk to a few items from the market's perspective before I speak to the merits of the proposal.
Thank you. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor Patrick. Mayor Patrick, honourable councillors, CEO Michael, it's a pleasure to come before you this evening. The main purpose for me to present as CEO of the Perth Markets is not to highlight the technical aspects of our deputation. My colleagues have done an exceptional job of that. But to come as a representative of Perth Markets, which I trust you value as a great corporate citizen. Perth Markets has over a 100-year history in supporting the produce industry in WA, and since 1989, we've been a resident as well as a productive and contributing member of this council's jurisdiction. We proudly and vigorously support and advocate for your Canning Vale Food Value Add Precinct project. And we are committed to furthering and continuing to partner with you in making this project a reality. What we are proposing, and we believe you'll agree, is an initiative which fully complements our mutual goals. If I may paraphrase some statements within your project prospectus, To validate these points, the City of Canning has identified the Canning Vale Industrial Area as a potential growth precinct for agri-food businesses that would be attracted to locale near WA's only wholesale fresh fruit and vegetable complex. Well, this expansion can't get much closer or fulfill your aspiration as laid out in the perspectives much better than this tenant, who will, as an added value, provide more than 100 local jobs. Further, the document states, local development and implementation is frequently cited as key to success for place-based policies. This is because local buy-in, local knowledge, local ideas, and local partnerships are thought to reinforce each other. We, Honourable Council, are as local as you can get. There are many similar passages within the prospectus that further illustrates the closeness and mutual belief and participation we have with this council, our council. The resistance for this initiative comes from a source which would like to portray itself as a little guy retail establishment which will be adversely affected by our expansion. However, this entity is actually a national conglomerate. In fact, as per their recent ASX submission, Vicinity Centres, Vicinity or the group, is one of Australia's leading retail property groups with a fully integrated asset management platform and 24 billion, with a B, in retail assets under management across 60 shopping centres, making it the second largest listed manager of Australian retail property. The group has a direct portfolio with interest in 59 shopping centres and manages 29 assets on behalf of strategic partners, 28 of which are co-owned by the group. Now we, Perth Markets Group Limited, being of a more collaborative mind, think there's also place and value add offering in our region for their asset management group to provide additional services to our growing and thriving community. But it's difficult for me, and perhaps yourselves, to believe that we pose a threat to them. In closing, I just want to reiterate, Perth Market Group is a cornerstone to your food value add precinct initiatives. And we will continue to contribute and work with yourselves, Mayor Patrick, CEO Michael, and the City of Canning management team to help establish what is envisioned in this report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. So, councillors, I would just like to leave you with 4 clear messages. The first is this proposal is exceptionally simple. It represents a minor increase in permitted gross floor area across the Market City site only, and for uses that are already permitted on the site by the planning scheme. Secondly, the proposal is for a scheme amendment only. Development cannot occur on site without being approved, noting that any future development application will be subject to a formal process, including most likely advertising. There are sufficient checks and balances to ensure that the appropriate land use and development outcomes will result from this amendment. Thirdly, our proposal is supported by detailed technical reporting confirming that it is consistent with the city's strategic planning framework and goals for the Canning Vale area. The reporting also confirms that the proposal is technically capable from a transport perspective, as an example, and that it would not impact the city's other activity centres. Fourthly and lastly, the objector has not provided any substantive or valid planning reason why the amendment should not proceed as proposed. For example, there is no report from a qualified expert on retail economics refuting any of the conclusions and recommendations from our team. There is also no specific analysis to support their claims that the proposal is inconsistent with State Planning Policy 4.2 activity centres, and I'll just refer to that as SPP 4.2. In our view, good planning relies on a considered application of agreed standards based upon strategic planning and an evidence-based approach. We have achieved this. For example, the work by Praxis demonstrates compliance with SPP 4.2. This is important because SPP 4.2 does the following. It defines how to measure the impact of retail proposals. It defines how to assess whether others are impacted. It clearly guides how we measure this impact, and importantly, it identifies whether the impact is acceptable or not. We utilise this clear accepted policy approach to prepare a detailed retail impact assessment, and this assessment has confirmed that the impact of the proposal would be insignificant. To clarify in policy terms, this means that the proposal is acceptable with no further study or conditions required. As a further guarantee and illustration of the minor nature of the proposal, we even undertook further modelling to measure the impact in the case of a supermarket being proposed at some time in the future. The results confirm no significant impact on other businesses, be they large, small or in between, as determined and defined by the policy. No evidence has been provided to refute these findings. Despite the matters raised last week by the objectors' representative with respect to potential impact on small businesses, and as Michael noted, we note no small businesses objected to this proposal. In fact, no businesses other than the objector's client objected. This reinforces that despite the minor nature of the proposal, it represents an important opportunity for the city and for Canning Vale in particular for generating employment and reflecting the city's strategic aims. In light of the context I presented, I submit the approach of Perth Markets represents good planning and confirms that the proposed amendment ought to be adopted for final approval by the city as per recommendation of your planning team. I would like to extend my thanks to the Mayor, Councillors and Council staff for this time this evening, and the project team are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Tomic. We won't be taking questions, but I appreciate you coming. If you'd like to stay in the gallery, we'll be bringing the matter forward, so it'll be the first item dealt with this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. At item 9, application for leave of absence, there are none this evening. Questions by members of which due notice have been given without discussion at item 10, there are none. Items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. As stated, I'll be bringing forward CD 009 of 23, the scheme amendment number 10 in Canning Vale. And we move to that item now. Thank you, councillors. It's item 13.3 on tonight's agenda, the responsible officer being Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development. The item is CD 009, the full title of the report being Adoption of Scheme Amendment number 10 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, portion of Lot 102 in brackets 208, Bannister Road in Canning Vale, introducing additional gross floor area provisions within additional use site number 3 in Schedule B. The officer's recommendation is on page 65 of tonight's agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover for that item, please? Councillor Sweeney, thank you. Seconder? I'll second it from the chair then. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Sweeney?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, look, fully support the officer's recommendation on this. I'm a Canning Vale resident and have been for quite some time, and I've seen the transformation of Canning Vale very recently with Metronet, and I'm very familiar with the Market City area there as well. And I think that what is going to be proposing here is only going to stimulate healthy competitive growth, and I think it's going to have a very positive impact on the local community. So I fully support the officer's recommendation. I've listened to the deputations from both sides last week and again this week as well. But I feel that, councillors, that there are no serious impacts. I don't think that I'll start again. There are no serious significant impacts for me on this motion. The opposition that I hear relates primarily to impact and effect to existing businesses and commercial turnover. I don't find this the case. I think that when you look at a shopping centre like Livingston Shopping Centre, I think that there are multiple like businesses right throughout that complex. There's coffee shops, there's hairdressers, there's optometrists, and they all appear to be trading very, very well and have survived and have been in business that way for many, many years. It doesn't seem to have any negative impact just because another coffee shop or another hairdressing salon opens up next door. And the same can be said for a supermarket. So in that respect, I am very, very much in favour of the proposed development, or at least the officer's recommendation in regards to this amendment. I think also that to some degree it's a little bit hypocritical. When you have a look at Livingston, we have a number of fast food outlets as well that all operate successfully from that one location. We have Hungry Jack's, we have KFC, we have Sombreros, Oroporto, McDonald's, all operating with a very, very short proximity to one another. And I don't feel that any of those businesses seem to be suffering from any downturn in trade because another like business opens up next door to them. So I don't think that is the case. I don't feel like that is an argument worthy of consideration to knock back this proposed amendment and stop this development. I think that the officer's recommendation has covered quite extensively a lot of the things that councillors would be considering in regards to a decision like this. But mainly from what I'm seeing, from the negative aspect, is the competition and the effect something like this may have on other businesses, which I don't feel is the case at all. So with that, councillors, I would strongly recommend that we all agree with the officer's recommendation and put this matter to the vote positively. So that's all I'll say on that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. I also support and commend the officer's recommendation and hope that Council will also follow and support the recommendation. In relation to this, the gentleman making, Mr Tomic, a moment ago, rightly said that there are sufficient checks and balances for any concerns in relation to this matter. There are certain procedural matters that need to be addressed before any application can be approved, a development application. We should be supporting, as one of Perth's premier councils with a very buoyant business sector, we should be supporting business. We are open for business. And as Councillor Sweeney said, competition is always good for business. And this development, when and if it occurs, will only add to the reputation of Canning as a centre and a destination for big business. And of course also it will, in no doubt, undoubtedly deliver more jobs into Canning. It'll support young people working in the sector and, young mums and families and kids, and it will actually support and encourage more employment in our area. So I think we should be very grateful that Canning has been considered for the site of this new destination retail outlet, whatever it might be, and I would hope, therefore, for support for this scheme amendment. Thank you, councillors. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter before I put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Motion CD 009 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, gentlemen. You're free, of course, to leave. Thank you for coming along and thank you for your deputation this evening. Our item 12 on tonight's agenda, reports of committee meetings. One item will be held over to confidential cover. At item 13, reports of the Office of the CEO. There are none this evening. At item 13.2, the responsible officer being Ms Lorraine Driscoll. To my left, the Director of Corporate and Commercial. The item is CC 011 of 23, Land Utilisation Plan 2020 to 2025 minor review. The recommendation is on page 10 of tonight's agenda and is currently on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? A mover for that item? I'll move it from the chair then. A seconder? Councillor Bain, thank you. I speak in favour of and support the officer's recommendation and have nothing further to say on the proposed revisions. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against the matter? No? Councillor Spencer-Teo? No, I'm ready to vote. Oh, ready to vote. Okay, thank you. Councillors, let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-01123 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. Thank you, Council. We move to CC 012 of 23. The title of the report being Monthly Financial Report for May 2023. The officer's recommendation, which is in 5 parts, appears on page 26 of tonight's agenda and is also on screen. Just a note for Council that part 5 of the recommendation requires an absolute majority. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. A seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Spencer-Teo?
What's that word? Support the officer's recommendation and have nothing to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, likewise, nothing to add.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against the item? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-012-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 13.3. That's CD 009 of 23. That's been dealt with. That was the planning matter from Canning Vale. We then move across to 13.4. The responsible officer being Mr Warren Boda by right, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. The item is EN 010 of 23. Tender 15/2019, in brackets Cat 2, close brackets FM.0 or 033.465 for Wandara Hall condition renewal. The officer's recommendation is on page 81 of the agenda and is currently on screen. Councillor Spencer-Teo, I understand you've been working with staff. You wish to put an amendment to that, but I'll offer for somebody to move it in the first instance. I'm a mover. Councillor Bain, thank you. A mover. Seconder? Seconder will be Councillor Sabiri. Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased to see this project get to tender finalisation tonight, with the much needed renewal works being the next stage. Thank you to the city officers involved in realising the project as part of establishing a community hub at Edgware Park for residents, community groups and youth in the area. The upgrade of Wandara Hall is very much in keeping with the other investments this council has made to really activate and uplift the area, including the new 3-on-3 basketball court, the pop-up skate park, new lighting infrastructure and the time of effort of city staff at Linwood Youth Centre. Applied strategic modelling and significant consultation with user groups have identified a real need for these renewal works at this ageing but strategic facility. The works will improve functionality and accessibility and by doing so also increase usage. I hope the officer recommendation is supported tonight and the city's efforts to really activate the area and enhance the social wellbeing of our residents. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Sabiri?
I support Officer recommendation, much needed investment in the area, and I encourage all the councillors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Spencer-Teo?
Sorry, just firstly, Mr Mayor, did we miss an item?
Which item?
CC 01123, the land utilisation.
Let me see, the minor review, no, that was dealt with, wasn't it? Yeah, we've already dealt with that one.
Okay, sorry, must have been asleep.
You
Yeah,
would-
sorry, I just wanted to
For the
move.
record, you would have voted on it.
Okay, I was too busy making sure someone else was voting.
Thank you.
Just wanted to move a minor amendment, and that is just to ensure that the allocation of the commercial kitchen upgrade is allocated no more than $120,000.
So we have the, I believe you've been working with staff, we have that thank you governance that's up on screen, so you're simply requesting to limit the expenditure in that item to 120,000, is that it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a seconder, please, for the amendment? Deputy Mayor has seconded it. Councillor Spencer-Teo, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, please, just briefly. Just recapping, the Wandara Hall is a community hall used regularly by 5 community groups and approximately 200 people in any given year. The revenue generated from the hall is around about $40,000 a year. In 2021, Council endorsed a corporate business plan and listed this renewal for the facility predominantly to the toilets at $370,000. Later in 2021, Wandara had its floors replaced to the cost of about $100,000. We then allocated another $930,000 to the 22-23 budget process for further renewal works as the scope had increased significantly, obviously. But now here we are in 2023 being asked to fund more, not because the tender price came in more than expected, but because the scope has once again increased. All of these additions are tipping the total renewal to over $1.1 million, well over 3 times the original budget, and the hall isn't even getting a new roof. But that's expected to be needed in about 5 to 8 years. This project has had constant upscopes, and not including the commercial fit-off in this tender process leaves us with no oversight as to the cost or the scope of the upgrades. So this amendment just simply makes sure that that's capped, and if it does go over, we will obviously be informed. I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed that we were only hearing about all of these upscope works now. This tender closed in March, and since then we've had several budget workshops detailing carried forward works, and issues have been raised in the past with the city's CapEx works program and the use of SAM. This, along with Councillor Bain's queries last week, could have all been addressed prior to this, and this item could have been far more simple and streamlined. Although we're yet to see although we've been assured time after time that the system is getting better and that we are improving, but we are yet to see that. Earlier today I was assured by our CEO that he's confident the kitchen works will be far less than $120,000. So this amendment merely holds this commitment to account. Therefore, I hope you'll support me in this amendment tonight. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kunza.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, I originally just seconded it to allow Councillor Spencer-Teo to enter into debate. But look, I support the amendment. Basically, Councillor Spencer-Teo has put out there why she believes this is required. But if at such, and I think 120,000 actually will probably get a suitable kitchen upgrade. But if for whatever reason more is required from that, then there's nothing to stop an amendment or such opportunity coming before council again later on. But this, I guess, provides that cap on a project that's, as Councillor Spencer-Teo mentioned, has gone up in price over the years. So, yeah, I think it's prudent to include this.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak either for or against the amendment before we put it to the vote? Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to the CEO.
Yes, of course. Just your microphone, Councillor Spencer-Teo. CEO, yes.
CEO, could you please explain what sort of challenges do you foresee or this amendment may put in front of the staff to complete the renewal works required?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Singh. Look, I think that what Councillor Spencer-Teo seeks to do is to limit or cap the investment in the kitchen upgrade to 120,000. It was a value that was identified in the council report or in the officer's report, I think we at this stage still need to scope the kitchen up. Our focus will be on delivering the project to the value that's been set. If for some reason that can't be achieved, as has been identified, we'll come back. But I certainly think it's achievable.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of questions. So just to confirm, CEO, the city's confident that it can finish the works or complete the works within that $120,000 amount?
CEO.
Look, yes.
Short answer is yes.
Excellent. And so the 31,000 that the tenderer quoted, that just includes the forward preparation works and fit off. If we were to go over that up to the $120,000, that includes the appliance fit out. Is that correct?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The 31,000 allocated and identified as part of the tender was to decommission and actually prepare the space for a subsequent investment in a kitchen. The discussion at officer level has been about, and we've received some feedback also about the scope and the extent of the investment required in that kitchen. Certainly a full commercial kitchen would likely exceed the 120,000, but we're hopeful, and confident that the 120,000 will allow a community kitchen, the users to better utilise that, and then even potentially attract other user groups who may wish to use that kitchen facility.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. If no one else wishes to speak, we might put that matter to the vote. This is just the amendment at the moment, so we're just voting on the amendment. Thank you, Governance.
The amendment to EN 010-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo's amendment has been carried unanimously and adopted by council, which now means it makes up the part of the substantive motion, a new part 3. That matter was previously moved by Councillor Bain, who spoke in support of it, of course, and seconded by Councillor Sabiri, who similarly spoke in favour of it. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you. Councillor Bain, no need to close debate on it. No one's spoken against the matter. We shall just put it to the vote. Thank you, Governance.
Substantive motion as amended, EN-010-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move on to EN-011 of 23, the report title being Queen's Park Open Space State Football Centre Land Tenure. The officer's recommendation, which is in 3 parts, is on page 93 of tonight's agenda and is currently also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Singh, thank you very much, and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Kunza, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Singh.
I support the officer's recommendation, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Likewise, I support the officer recommendation. I think this enables an exciting time for that, an exciting moment for that location, and over the next few years we should see a lot more things to do for locals and also a better environment. So I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you, Governance. We'll put it to the vote. just, yeah.
Motion EN-01123 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We move to EN 012 of 23, the title of the report, Environmental Honour Board Nominations for 2021 and 22. The officer's recommendation is on page 104 of the agenda and is also on screen. Councillor Bain made a disclosure earlier in relation to the matter. There's no need for you to leave the room, Councillor Bain. It's quite appropriate for you to remain. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Bain is the mover. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Kunza. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer recommendation and just wanted to say thank you to all of the nominees for all of their hard work, their sacrifice and everything that they do for our environment and community. Having their names on the honour board is due recognition of their much appreciated efforts and contributions. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Very lucky, aren't we? Deputy Mayor.
Likewise, I echo Councillor Bain's sentiments. You look at the paragraph 2 of the report and the number of the people who are already on the Environmental Honour Board. They've invested so much into our community and it's a credit to them, but we're also going to add a few more and it's exciting to see that they'll be recognised in this way. And likewise with Councillor Bain, commend everyone that was nominated, but also the people that nominated them. It's great that they invested their time into putting them up and look forward to an event where we can congratulate the successful nominees.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against the matter or ask a question before we put it to the vote? Thank you. We'll put it to the vote.
Motion EN-012-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. Now we are at EN 013 of 23, the report title being Outcome of Community Engagement on the Review of Dogs on Leash and Off-Leash Spaces. The officer's recommendation is on page 110 of the agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? A mover? I'll move it from the chair then. Seconder? Councillor Singh, thank you very much for that. I'll move it from the chair, as I said. Sorry about that. I accept the recommendation and support it. I'm really pleased to see that there is going to be, first of all, some progress on the dedicated dog park at Park Beaching Close in Shelley, and I know the local council has been working very hard with the community in relation to that aspect of this recommendation. I think that's a good thing, and I think any opportunity to get in front of our community and consult on any matter, especially those around dogs. And we heard a difference of opinion this evening by a resident. The only way we can generally hear that sort of feedback is to actually consult with our residents. So receiving the survey result and accepting what it said at this stage, I think is important. So I support the recommendation as it is. Councillor Singh?
I support the officer recommendation, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I have a foreshadowed motion that I would like to present, please.
Thank you, and I understand both yourself and Councillor Bain have been working on a foreshadowed alternative motion. Councillors, I'm not sure if that's been circulated to everybody, but if it hasn't, it's now on screen, and that is a foreshadowed alternative motion which will be considered by Council in the event that the substantive motion is not supported by Council. Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Spencer-Teo, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make it clear that I actually do support items 1 and 3 of the officer recommendation, but the issue I have is with item 2, and it would significantly change, so that's the reason for the foreshadowed motion. Item 2 says to me that we've got it right and no further work is required in respect to our dog on and off leash areas. This recommendation says to the community the increasing number of annual dog attacks is acceptable and there's nothing that we want or can do to reduce these numbers. My foreshadowed motion says sorry, but we believe that we can, and we want to do better to promote responsible dog ownership, to protect our pedestrians, joggers, cyclists, and also dogs. We're saying that we're willing to learn from others and find practical solutions so people can exercise their dogs on and off leash responsibly, and families with children can enjoy parks and playgrounds without fear of being approached by dogs, whether they're friendly or not. We will never get this 100%, but we can at least try to reduce the amount of dog attacks and increase our community sense of safety and belonging in our parks and reserves. My foreshadowed motion only materially changes item 2 by saying we don't accept that dogs on and off leash areas are acceptable across Canning, and it requests staff to do a little bit more work to find that balance. That's all we're asking, councillors, find a balance. A fair balance between dog owners and non-dog owners. Mr Churi was correct. There is not one playground in Rossmoyne where you can go where it is clear that dogs are only permitted on leash. Not one. There's only one in Shelley, and the park isn't even big enough for a small child to run around, and it sits directly along Leach Highway. It's not one of the most popular parks, that's for sure. This is not about giving one more and the other less, or vice versa. It's about finding a balance. Now, I love dogs. Mine are part of my family, and if everybody was a responsible dog owner, I would love to see dogs permitted everywhere in all public spaces. But this is not about me, and it's not about my feelings. This is about the Canning community, and if you believe families should have access to at least one local park with a playground, whether it be fenced or have restrictions on dogs which enables them to use the public open space without fear, then I ask you not to support this officer recommendation and support my foreshadowed motion, which merely strives harder to find that balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Anyone else wish to speak? Do you want a moment just to read the foreshadowed motion? I can see eyes on the screen. Councillor Bain, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's probably best if we scroll down to 5 and 6, which will be relevant to information I put forward. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll be supporting the foreshadowed motion tonight, Mr Mayor. Following Mr Burgeselic's questions at the AB and the concerns he raised last week, I thought it prudent and incumbent on Council to investigate the issue of conflict between dogs and children at Judy Pinnell Park. As Mr Burgeselic pointed out, and the City in its own AB comments, there has been conflict at the park between passive users and off-leash dogs. Seeking public consultation and having a trial period, as put forward in the foreshadowed motion at 5 and 6, is part of the process for potentially changing the on-lead, off-leash status of a park. The feedback we receive will enable us to make informed decisions about the future use of Judy Pinnell Park and Fern Close Park. Given that a change could potentially be made, I cannot support part 2 of the officer recommendation, which asks Council to accept that no further changes to off-leash provision be made. Our community has come to us directly and asked us to consider changing the status of the parks. Community safety is the #1 priority and the motivation for the foreshadowed motion. I hope that it receives Council's support. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. We're only speaking on the substantive motion at the moment, councillors, not the foreshadowed motion. Anyone else wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO.
Yes.
Given that we have 2 parks identified as to be dedicated dog parks, and we don't even have funds allocated for the both parks yet, and it is likely that both parks will not be built until 2025, even though we go down the path of further investigations, which will highly likely, I believe, may result. I agree with Councillor Spencer-Teo's rationale that there is further investigation needed. What I'm trying to understand, even if we identify more areas which requires dedicated dog parks, what is CEO's opinion in terms of, do we have funds available to address those issues? What can we do about those issues which we may find part of investigation?
CEO, you able to answer that?
No. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question. Look, I get the sense from this recommendation that that what we're being asked to do is to consider the feedback, to consider how we can ensure that there's a good balance between dog on-leash, off-leash, and the interaction between playground users and the rest and the remaining areas. So we would need to do that work and then determine what the impacts of those things are. I can't theorise until such time as we do that work. Mr. Bowe might like to make some further comments.
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The foreshadowed alternative motion, as I see it, Councillor Singh, doesn't call for the construction of additional specific dog parks. It calls for a further review of on-leash and off-leash areas in the context of playgrounds and the protections that may be afforded or not across the city. So that was my interpretation of the foreshadowed motion.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. When the 2 dedicated dog park sites were identified, the investigations which were done as part of those identifications, are those investigations significantly different from what is being asked in the foreshadowed motion?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe they are. A dedicated dog park is a purpose-built facility, estimated at $180,000 each, which council, when they endorsed the dog spaces strategy, asked for the allocation of funds to be included in the long-term financial plan. So that's this specific dog park. What the alternative motion looks at or asks the city's administration to do is conduct a further review into on-leash and off-leash areas in parks specifically, and this is my interpretation, to try and afford a greater level of protection and at least a greater level of access for some of our residents who don't have access to on-leash areas, where specifically they've been only able to access off-leash areas which don't present to them the enjoyment of the parklands that they're after.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Shen Sekon. That's it?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hall. I support this foreshadow motion.
We're just not speaking to the foreshadowed motion, so you're either speaking for the substantive motion or against the substantive motion at the moment.
Okay, so maybe I'll speak after.
You can ask a question, but if you're speaking in favour of the, if you're going to be supporting the foreshadowed motion, that would mean that you won't be supporting the motion before us at the moment. You can certainly give your reasons for that.
Okay.
Why you would not support the current substantive motion.
Okay, so I'll not be supporting the current substantive motion. Being a former cultural ambassador and still very much working closely with our culturally and linguistically diverse community through my volunteer work with various non-for-profit organizations here in Canning, I'm often having conversations with the local community, and some of their concerns revolve around not being able to enjoy Canning's amazing public open spaces, whether it's just walking the kids to school or going for walks and jogs in the park due to it being a dog off-leash area. Even if it is a dog on-leash area, it's not often adhered to, and they are subject to comments such as, oh, he's harmless, he's only a puppy, and why are you so afraid? Another question I'm often asked is, where can I take my children in Canning with a decent playground where I don't have to fear being approached by dogs? Sadly, I cannot answer that question, as there hasn't been anywhere I have found or heard of in Canning that provides a playground that is fenced or a dog on-leash only area. Whilst I acknowledge the great work that the City of Canning has done in making our public open spaces accessible to all, I do believe that we can do better to promote inclusivity by ensuring the amount of dog on off-leash areas is balanced and fair for all of our community members from various backgrounds, origin, cultures, whether they own and love dogs or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Bowe. Is it true that there are parks, and more specifically parks with playgrounds, that don't actually have signs whether they're on-lead or off-lead areas?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm led to believe that there are. However, the Act is quite specific in that unless it's signed that it is able to be an off-leash area, or unless it's signed as an off-leash area, the default is that it's required, dogs are required to be on leashes.
But, I mean, the majority of the population wouldn't be aware of that. Should we not make sure that all our parks have relevant signage before stipulating that they're appropriate, to ensure that people are take necessary steps when they're taking their dog to a park.
Director Bowe, is that something you can answer? Or?
I don't believe it is, Mr Mayor. That's quite subjective. I'm aware of the legislation, and obviously in my role, I'm required to be aware of the legislation. I couldn't surmise whether the general public is aware of the legislation or not. But dog owners, certainly when they're registering their dogs, are given information about the legislative requirements that apply to them.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Just on that, if we can't issue a parking fine for someone who's parked somewhere because there's no sign telling you you're not allowed to park, how can we issue a fine to someone who's got their dog off leash in a park that doesn't have a sign saying that your dog needs to be on leash?
Would that be a problem with compliance? Director McQuaid?
Because the Dog Act prescribes it so, as Director Bowe has said, the Dog Act prescribes that unless a park is signed off leash, you are required to have your dog on leash. So therefore, under the Dog Act, we can do, and dog owners are made aware, as Director Bowe said, when they register their dogs, of the requirements.
It would be a little bit like ignorance is no excuse under the law in relation to speeding. I mean, if a road is not signposted, it's a residential area. Not every residential street has a 50-kilometre sign, but we all know if there's no signpost, it's a 50 sign. And I guess people have to take responsibility if you're going to take a dog to a park. And there's a lot of irresponsible dog owners, unfortunately, out there. It's up to those people to check whether or not the park they're about to take their dog to and let it run around is actually on lead, off leash. I get it, but that's the Dog Act. Yes.
Sorry, but there's nothing stopping us, even though that is the Act, there's nothing stopping us from putting a sign saying your dog must be on a leash in this. Although we don't have to, we could.
I wouldn't think so. We can go further, Director. Of course we can. Yes, we can. Yep. Anyone else wish to speak? I might just close, then we will... Oh, Councillor Sweeney.
I'm going to throw something else into the mix here. I don't agree with the officer's recommendation, but I am going to throw something else up because it has been troubling me since we had our SIB, and it was spoken about last week when we had our meeting, and Mr Bowe has just announced it as well, that councillors, that we are considering right now to spend $180,000 on a dog park. Now, I know that this was endorsed by council, but I think there needs to be some flexibility with our decision-making process here because times have changed. In today's financially strapped environment, I think if the ratepayers were listening to us right now and thinking that council was going to make a decision of spending $180,000 on a dog park instead of that money perhaps being spent on some sort of human project or initiative, I don't think they'd be very happy with any of us. And I think that that money could be better spent, and I think we need to reconsider this decision. I think the money could be better spent on upgrading and improving playgrounds. For example, we still don't have 2 playgrounds in every ward. That money could be spent for that purpose. That money also could be spent to improve playgrounds where we need more furniture in those playgrounds. We need to replace sand, we need to improve swings or whatever the case may be, but playgrounds is supposed to be a priority for us. Also, active spaces for children. There's a number of different initiatives that I hear different councillors come up and speak all the time about. This money could be diverted into some of these initiatives and strategies to help our youth. So I think for me at the moment, and I just wonder, I don't know how we're going to go about this, but I think for me at the moment, I don't think even an amendment of item 3, because it changes the intent, so I can't amend it. So what I would propose perhaps is for a procedural motion to defer this item so further discussions can take place at a SIB, so we can then be better informed and have a look at how we're going to spend this $180,000 better for the community instead of spending it on a dog park.
Councillor Councillor Sweeney is putting a procedural motion to defer the matter. To defer it till when, Councillor Sweeney?
1 month's time.
Till July?
Yes, if we can, governance. Next council
It would
meeting
need to
date.
be August?
Yeah, and in that time, in between that time, we have a SIB to discuss perhaps the allocation of this money.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Sweeney has put a procedural motion which doesn't engender any debate. We only consider it if there's a seconder in the room for the proposition, but Councillor Sweeney, that would mean that we would be actually dealing with that matter after the budget's already been delivered and adopted by council, so I'm not certain what the effect of it might have. But you have put the motion. If we do have a seconder, we will vote on it. If we don't have a seconder, we will move on. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I know that's not ideal. I'd like to do it beforehand, but I don't think I can because governance has just informed us we can't do it, can we? We can't have it in July.
We don't have a SIB in July, but irrespective, we're handing down the budget on the 27th of June.
Sorry, the meeting in July, but we have the SIB before the 30th of June.
CEO?
Councillors, our next SIB is on the 26th of July. So the August OCM will be your next opportunity if you wish to discuss the matter at a SIB prior to further consideration of this matter.
Councillors, the procedural motion's been put at the moment. If we don't have a seconder, we will move on with it. You're going to second it? Councillor Sabiri has seconded it. Let's put the matter to the vote to defer it or not defer it. So, councillors, just for the new councillors, if the matter is carried, we defer it until the date set. If the deferral is not supported by council, we carry on with the order of business and make a decision on this matter tonight. That's the choice. Thank you, Governance.
The procedural motion to defer this item has been lost, with 3 voting for and 7 voting against. Those councillors voting against, the Mayor, Deputy Kunza, Councillor Tuchek, Councillor Spencer-Teo, Councillor Singh, Councillor Sakon and Councillor Bain.
Thank you. Councillors, we move on, then we get back to the order of business, which is EN 013 in relation to the dog spaces strategy. The matter has been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Singh. I've spoken in favour of it. Councillor Singh has spoken. We've had a number of questions. Councillor Spencer-Teo has put a foreshadowed motion, and I'm not certain if anyone else wishes to speak against it. If they don't, I will close debate and we'll move. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I'd just like to say, look, I'm voting against the motion purely because of point 2. I think Councillor Spencer-Teo made some prudent points. But with respect to point 3, if anything has come out of this process, it's the fact that the conflict between dogs and people, there's different views on it. And for the dog spaces strategy to propose a number of dedicated dog parks across the City of Canning to provide locations where people can exercise their dogs in a safe environment, free from human activity, but also free from concerns with impacting playgrounds and so forth, I think it's worthwhile investment. There's a number of sites located across the city. I've never owned a dog myself, but I can only imagine having to identify places to take them. And if you've got a dog that has anxiety or if you're concerned about the impact on other people, you want a dedicated spot. So I think it's worthwhile investment to build these places across the city. And it's something that came out very supportive from the public in our dog spaces strategy, to put them across the city of Canning and to have the funding in this budget to provide a dedicated dog park. I think that is worthwhile investment. And so I will vote against the officer recommendation purely because I think there's some considerations as to how we can deal with the conflict, especially at playgrounds, that every single playground has an on and off leash area, whether there's other local governments that actually implements, I guess, different sort of strategies to. It's also something that we've spoken about in the past, the fact that the level of investment into fences around playgrounds, maybe that's something the city can consider in the future as we get to a more good financial position, which we are right now, and maybe that's something we can look at in the future, is to more investment around playgrounds. But we've got over 150 of them, more than 2 per ward. And I think that looking at potential conflict areas with the data on dog attacks might be worth looking at. So I'll vote against this to vote for the foreshadowed motion.
Thank you, councillors. Unless anyone else wishes to speak, I might just close debate and then we can move on. I'm reading the room, so I'm thinking we might just save some time and move on. If anybody else feels compelled to speak, please speak. If not, I shall close debate very quickly on the current recommendation. Okay, I'll then move to close debate. Look, just a quickly rebuttal. I think Councillor Spencer Teo mentioned that the report basically says no further work is required. I'm not certain that's what it is, but I respect her opinion. But I think what I would say is that the dog spaces strategy, it's open to council to bring that back for review, and I think that would be a proper thing to do at any point. And because it was adopted in 2022, that doesn't mean that we have to wait 5 or 10 years to bring it back for review. We can bring any policy or strategy back for the review of this council for our feedback at any time. What I'm really impressed with is that we had a resident tonight who thought that he hadn't been heard, and obviously he has been heard loud and clear. I think that tonight, whether or not the officer's recommendation is adopted or whether the alternate motion is adopted, I think it's a good outcome for the community, but I tend to agree with some of the things that have been said tonight. In some respects, who knows, maybe we're going to save some money from the need to fence off playgrounds if we actually have a number of parks that are actually specifically dog free. So I'm not sure. I think maybe there's some work to be done in that space, and I think I'm really pleased with some of the comments made, most of the comments made around the room in relation to this item that made a lot of sense and raised issues that I hadn't considered previously. And I think that's a benefit of debate, isn't it? We shouldn't come into the room with a preconceived idea. We should stop and listen to debate, and I certainly have. So I propose to put this matter to the vote. I will continue to support the officer's recommendation until council resolves otherwise, and then we'll address that next matter. Thank you, Governors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion EN 013-23 has been lost. 1 in favour with 9 voting against. Might be easy to say the Mayor Hall has voted for the motion and every other councillor has voted against. Thank you.
It's called integrity, governance. Man of my word. Councillors, thank you for that. We shall move then to the foreshadowed alternate motion, which now becomes a substantive motion for this evening. Councillor Spencer T, I will put that you are moving it. Councillor Bain, if you like, that you are seconding it since you're the co-author. I'm not certain that an awful lot of discussion is required on this, but certainly Councillor Spencer T, I'll ask you to start off debate on the foreshadowed alternate motion, which is now the motion.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate again that this is not about dog lovers versus non-dog lovers. It's about finding a balance between the two. So our own data tells us that a large percentage of dog owners don't feel safe allowing their dogs off leash, even in designated dog exercise areas, through fear of attack from another dog. It also tells us that in some suburbs of Canning, there isn't anywhere where you can enjoy a park or a park with a playground without being it also being a dog exercise area. I just want to touch on the dog attacks. The review that we had didn't include any data on the number of reported dog attacks in Canning, but since 2020, the number of reports has increased by a massive 72.8%. They've risen from 103 in 2020 to 179 so far this financial year. So it's clear that we still need to do some work. In respect to the signage, as mentioned, the dog on lead only parks do not have any signage. We are expecting the community to assume or to obviously read up on legislation. I understand that it might be on when you register a dog, but what about when you don't register a dog? You just assume that if a person is there with a dog off lead, that they're obviously allowed to be there and you have to leave. Or, you know, you end up in a fight with that person, which is, if we just had a few signs here and there, it would make that really clear. I think some parks we go over and above with signage for dog exercise areas. I think Fifth Park has about 4 signs relating to dogs, if not 5, whether it's reminding people to pick up after their dogs or whether it's telling people it is a dog exercise area. So I think just having one sign saying dogs on lead only would be really helpful. I also believe that when we do have places like Kent Street, where just a simple sign to say what the rules are, it's common sense, but unfortunately responsible dog owners or irresponsible dog owners sometimes lack common sense. And if we just have those rules, and at least everybody, no one complete ignorance at the end of the day. Just touching on a couple of things that Mr. Churi said. I've had a look at the City of Melville, City of Bayswater, and also City of South Perth. They all vary in their dog restrictions, but some are actually really interesting and I think really worth looking into. City of Melville does ban dogs on all streets and shared paths. They also ban dogs on certain known wildlife and conservation areas. The City of Bayswater requires dogs to be on a leash within 20 metres of a playground and within 5 metres of a car park. And dogs are banned from all wetland areas. They have 40 designated off-lead areas in Bayswater, and every other public open space requires dogs to be on a leash. They actually have a really good balance, and it's very clear where you can and can't go with a dog on or off lead. In City South Perth, they require dogs to be on a leash within 5 metres of a playground and from 5 metres of the edge of any playing field while it's being used for sporting activities. They also have 7 areas which are completely banned from dogs altogether. So they're specifically set aside for the enjoyment of people and for the native wildlife. And these areas are mainly fauna reserves where people swim, picnic and barbecue. So that sounds like a really reasonable compromise and definitely worth exploring. I'd also be really interested to compare dog registration against population data of those local governments and also to see how many dog attacks they have. Maybe one of their formulas works, maybe we could use a little bit from one and a little bit from another. So I just think it's definitely worth exploring. It's not something that I believe we have to consult the community of. Could be obviously as a desktop review. And I just think it's worthwhile really looking at each suburb and making sure that there is at least one park that's adequately signed where people can go and enjoy it without the fear of dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief. This foreshadowed motion, it's all about community safety and striking and finding that right balance between dog owners and other park users. Mr. Cherry and Mr. Bujichelka come to us asking us to conduct further investigations and consultation, which is what this motion does. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Look, I'll actually speak in support of it, and I will be supporting the motion. Look, I was really, again, very proud to listen to the debate in the chamber, how respectful it was, and the quality of the comments that were made and the arguments presented. So thank you, councillors. I don't normally subscribe to knee-jerk reactions to a very small number of people, but I know, and we all know, that as part of an inclusive and welcoming community, we need to recognise the changing face of our community and accept that not everybody, as I said earlier, especially some people from some particular countries, are not quite as endeared to dogs as many Australians might be, and we really need to genuinely and respectfully accept their position. And so I think some work needs to be done, and I thank the two councillors, Spencer, Teo and Bain, for the work done behind the scenes to put this together, and I support it. Does anyone wish to speak against the matter? Does anyone else wish to speak? And if not, we will put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote. Still waiting for one, I think. You're the no, I think, aren't you? We've already got you, Councillor Sweeney. We've got them all now.
Foreshadowed motion EN-013-23 has been carried. 9 in favour, with Councillor Sweeney voting against the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Customer and Community. At item 7.5 is the there are no more reports from that director. At item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given, there are none. Item 15, urgent business, there is none. Confidential matters now. For those in the public gallery, attention all. Thank you and good night. Preempting us, thank you. I thank the members of the public for their attendance this evening and ask that they please leave the council chamber in order for council to consider the confidential matters. Can I have a mover and a seconder? The confidential items CC 013 of 23, CC 014 of 23, and also reports of committee meetings at item 12.1 be dealt with behind closed doors in accordance with section 5.23 closed brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 1995. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bain, thank you. A seconder was Councillor Sabiri. Can we put the matter to the vote?
The motion to go behind closed doors has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. I'll just ask you to confirm that the live streaming has been paused while the confidential items are about to be discussed. I thought you beat dinner. Governance, may I ask, are we now live streaming? We are. Thank you. We'll recommence the meeting. The time now is 8:03 p.m. and for the sake of the recording, Council has now reconvened out of our confidential behind closed doors section of the meeting and are now reopening for the public. Three decisions were resolved by Council during that period, and I shall read them out. The first of which was item 12.1 on tonight's agenda, the title being Report of the Audit and Risk Committee held on the 31st of May 2023. The committee's recommendation was that the recommendations of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 31st of May 2023 for the following items as listed in this report be adopted, and they were the following dot points: ARC 006 of 23, Internal Audit Activity Report; ARC 007 of 23, Status of Outstanding Audit Recommendations; ARC 008 of 23, Internal Audit Plan 2023-24; ARC 009 of 23, Risk and Business Continuity Activity Report; ARC 010 of 23, City Debt; ARC 011 of 23, Superannuation Payments; ARC 012 of 23, Project Update 1 Council Rating Module. That matter was put to Council and resolved unanimously, I believe, 10 in favour, none against. The second matter was CC 013 of 23, the title of that report being Tenancy Proposal for Low Key Cafe of Fern Road in Wilson. Officer's recommendation, which has been subsequently endorsed by Council, is that Council 1 endorses the draft Heads of Agreement between the City and Nedgo Proprietary Limited as the basis for A, proposed additions and upgrades to the undertaken by Nedgo Proprietary Limited to the Riverton Bridge Cafe, in brackets trading as Low Key River Cafe, located at 223 Fern Road, Wilson, in brackets lot 233 close brackets, and B, an agreement to sublease between the City, being the City of Canning, and Nedgo Proprietary Limited, and a new sublease between the City and Nedco Proprietary Limited. 2, request that the Chief Executive Officer provides local public notice of the proposed disposal of land by way of sublease to Nedgo Proprietary Limited in accordance with Section 3.58 of the Local Government Act 1995. Full stop. Should objections be received during the local public notice, an item is to be referred back to Council for consideration at the next available Council meeting. And finally, at item 3, subject to there being no objections received during the local public notice under Part 2, request the Chief Executive Officer to A, notify the State of Western Australia for the draft Heads of Agreement; B, execute the Heads of Agreement; and C, thereafter undertake all necessary actions outlined in the Heads of Agreement, including entering into the agreement to sublease and new sublease upon fulfilment of the relevant conditions precedent. That recommendation was moved by Councillor Spencer Teo, it was seconded by Councillor Sabiri, and it was unanimously adopted by Council, 10 in favour, none against. The third and final item, and also the final item of this evening, is CC 014 of 2023, the title of the report being Report of CEO Performance Review Committee held on the 25th of May 2023. The officer's recommendation that the recommendation of the CEO Performance Review Committee meeting held on the 25th of May 2023 for the following items as listed in this report be adopted. Governors, can I just ask you to put, you've got on the screen, they are CC, is that 002 of 23, Chief Executive Officer Performance and Salary Review for 2022-23, and CC 003 of 23, Chief Executive Officer Key Performance Indicators 2023-24. That item was put to Council and resolved unanimously, 10 in favour and no one in dissent. The meeting was then reopened, and I now move to item 17, which is closure. There being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed at 8:08 p.m. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and good evening.